I am Michael Reid coming to you from Athens, Greece. I'm here with Tim Brookes, the president of the Endangered Alphabets Project, and we're here to talk about the project itself and about an exciting new venture that we're embarking on. So, Tim, thank you for joining me from, I know you're in Vermont. Where exactly are you?
Actually, I'm right across the lake from Burlington, Vermont. I can look out of my window and see Lake Champlain and the Green Mountains, and they are cold.
Yeah, you are having quite the cold snap over here. We are here too, but nothing like that. We're like floating around 2 or 3 Celsius. You're quite a bit lower than that over there. But I hope you're inside and warm and pipes are unfrozen and heating is going.
Yep.
So for people who might not know, just sort of tell us, what is the Endangered Alphabets Project? How did it start and what are its goals?
Yes, so by now, most people understand the concept of endangered languages. So all over the world, you have all kinds of minority cultures who have been usually driven virtually out of existence or forced to assimilate and speak the language of some other culture that is dominating them. And when the last sort of mother tongue speakers of that script are getting elderly, it becomes really clear that everything that that culture has learned, all of their collective wisdom, is in danger of disappearing. The fact is, very much the same is true for writing systems, but typically people in the West don't realize that there are as many writing systems as there are. We recognize our alphabet, the Latin alphabet, we recognize Cyrillic, maybe Arabic, Japanese, Chinese, that kind of thing. But beyond that, it's kind of a blur. But in fact, by my calculation, there are about 300 writing systems in the world. And, you know, when something is important, we write it down. And so because again, there is an imbalance of power, there is a marginalization goes on, and one culture stops using its own writing system and begins using one that either they're forced to or they think will be more economically advantageous. Within 2 generations, everything that has been written by that culture is lost, which is personal histories and legal documents and recipes and sacred texts. It's the accumulated identity of that people. And so bad things happen when people lose that sense of that sense that they belong, that sense they have value, that they have history, that, you know, they have a footprint on this earth, wherever they are. And when that gets lost, some pretty terrible things happen. And these have been well documented. For example, deaths in childbirth go up, alcoholism rates go up, education rates go down. Economically, there's a lot of dwindling because they've lost their sense of purpose, of place, of pride. And the Endangered Alphabets Project is the only organization in the world that is looking at and trying to address this issue. Every single day, I'm talking to people around the world who are saying, you know, our traditional script is dying. It's not used anymore. It's not taught in schools. What can we do to revive it? And that's our purpose, to bring this message that this is a really significant thing to the West, you know, to the privileged part of the world, and then to work with the less privileged part of the world to see what we can do to help them regain their script, their language, their sense of who they are.
So in a way, writ large, this is kind of like a language revitalization project in a sense, but orthographically based.
That's right. So It's interesting. Until the mid 1990s, there was no concept of endangered languages. And then there was a very important paper that was published that sort of said, hey, we need to do something about this. And so first there was the documentation of endangered languages, and then study of endangered languages, and finally revitalization. That has not yet happened with writing systems because for various reasons, linguists study the spoken language, and for them, the written language is very much secondary. In my work and my research, I've discovered that this is very unfair, very misleading. In many places, the written language is so iconic that there are places in the world where you still see sculptures or artwork or tourist trinkets or t-shirts with their writing on it, even if nobody can read and write them anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's that bound to the sense of identity.
Exactly. It's like a flag or a coin or a stamp. This is who we are. This is what represents us to the rest of the world.
What would you say, and you sort of hinted at it, but what would you say to somebody who says, why is this really that important? A good chunk of the world uses the Latin alphabet or some modification thereof, even places that don't use the Latin alphabet, like countries that use Cyrillic alphabet, here in Greece that uses the Greek alphabet, China, Japan. Even in these places, there's a lot of use of the Latin alphabet for advertising or that kind of thing. What is the, is this a solution in search of a problem, or what's, why is this important? To put it in blunt terms, who cares?
Right. So this entire sort of way of looking at the world was really begun in the 1960s when the Red List of Endangered Species was published. Before that, nobody had really cared. If a species died out, it was their fault. The dodo was stupid. It deserved to be, rendered into extinction. The passenger pigeon, there were too many of them. Let's just shoot them out the sky kind of thing. And this is a kind of a useful analogy because if someone says, well, why should we care about this script that is only being used by 12 people anymore? And I say, well, it's kind of like the spotted owl. If we say, there's only 12 spotted owls left, and if they become extinct, well, it's a shame. It's a shame to us. To the spotted owl, it's a catastrophe. It's the worst
end of the world
thing that could possibly happen. Yeah. And so we are so used to being top dog. We have no conception of how we have made life difficult or next to impossible for other cultures all over the world. Mm-hmm. And you talk about them using, for example, a variation on the Latin alphabet. So in some instances, what this means is that they are writing in letters that visually to them represent the nation or the culture that conquered them. Everything that we do at the Endangered Alphabets is about language. It's also about social justice and human rights.
Right. And you make a very interesting point, because even if they aren't necessarily forced or obligated to speak the colonizer's language, they become forced or obligated to write in the colonizer's alphabet. So there is, as you say, that constant and lasting reminder of their subjugation.
It goes even further than that. There are places I've come across where land ownership documents are written typically by a government in the official script. And unless that is, unless that script is used, a document doesn't have legal force. And so you may have somebody whose family has farmed land in this area for generations or centuries. But if somebody comes along with a piece of paper in the official script, then it's like, I've got it here in black and white.
Mhm.
And the relationship then between power and government and authority and writing often, if not always, works to the benefit of works against the benefit of those who are disadvantaged.
You're embarking on this new Kickstarter campaign, and it's the right to speak, right to read, the right to write campaign. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the inspiration for it, and what do you hope to achieve with it?
Right. So one of the things that has become clear to me over the 12 years I've been doing this is that because the phrase endangered alphabets is so new, it's not yet really in the common vocabulary, people don't really get what it means. All we see is the Latin alphabet, and so therefore anything different, it's hard to understand what an endangered alphabet might even look like. And the second thing is, until people hear the story as to why this script is important to its people and why it's endangered, then they don't get it. And so my idea is to do a really large, eye-catching carving or sculpture. I've done a lot of smaller ones that are, in people's houses, but I want this to be out in public so that the same effect is just writ large. To have a big sculpture which has these three phrases that you just quoted, the right to speak, the right to read, the right to write, it gives me the opportunity, first of all, to draw people in with this visual conundrum, this kind of enigmatic quality, but then in accompanying text to tell the stories of these three, and by implication, other endangered scripts. So I'll tell you right now the story of these three scripts and why I decided to include them. So the first one, the right to speak, is going to be an Osage. So the Osage people, like most native peoples in North America, largely an oral culture, driven from their homelands as a result of the Indian Removal Act in the early 19th century, left to struggle to survive as best they might, but also if their children were educated, they were educated typically in English-speaking Christian boarding schools. And what is becoming horribly apparent just in the last year or two, especially in Canada, is the degree to which cultural assimilation, this notion of the melting pot, what it really meant was subjecting these children to appalling conditions to get them to erase their own language. And the Osage script was invented just over the course of the last 20 years as one way to help the Osage rediscover and reteach and relearn their own language, and to have this kind of, these letters be just visually say, nobody else has an alphabet like us. This is ours. This is who we are. And it's really part of that sense of regaining the feeling that you actually have a right to exist. So that's the first one. The second one, the right to read, is going to be in the Bamum script, which was created in the early 20th century by King or Sultan Ibrahim Njoya of the Bamum people of Cameroon. So Cameroon, again, you have a largely oral culture, but it's a colonial culture. So they're exposed to seeing writing, and it becomes clear that writing is a tool of the powerful. And Ibrahim Njoya does a really, really interesting thing. He sends the word out to his people to bring him symbols or visual images, things that might have been decorations in pottery, for example, or little designs of features of the landscape or house design or whatever. So they bring him several thousand of these, and he sorts through them, and he starts creating a script for his people. Unfortunately, all of this happened while Cameroon was under German colonial rule. After the First World War, Germany loses its possessions in Africa, the French take over, and the French are absolutely not interested in this display of indigenous pride. And so they maneuver him out of power. They set fire to his library, they destroy his printing press, they drive him into exile, and he dies in the early 1930s. So that one is there to illustrate, first of all, the relationship between writing and power, but
Absolutely.
also the way in which having your own writing system can absolutely transform the identity of a people. In this case, transform them to the point where they are seen to be kind of dangerous to somebody who thinks they own them, kind of thing. But yes, we don't realize how extraordinarily powerful a tool writing is in general, and having one's own script is in particular.
For sure.
So the third one, the right to write, is going to be in the Mite-Mayak script, which is for the Manipuri language in northeastern India. Most people don't know about this script, and again, I'm all about introducing new things. So this script has a really interesting history because it was the accepted standard script for Manipuri. If ever a script could have been thought to be settled and stable and safe, this was it. And then the king converted to a different religion. And religions and forms of writing are very, very closely associated with each other. And he ordered that everything written in that script, the Mite-Mayak script, be burned.
Oh, wow.
So you have, it's one of several extinction events, you know, like where in a measurable amount of time, something goes from everything to nothing. And again, it's a sign of how vital, but also how vulnerable writing is. It took a lot of fighting to get it accepted again. So this is a very volatile and potent process. And so these are the stories that this large sculpture is going to tell.
What is your funding goal for this Kickstarter?
I've done a lot of research in terms of what it takes to build a large sculpture of this kind. Obviously, I'm used to doing smaller pieces, and the challenges get exponentially bigger. So because all of this, 26,000. Then Kickstarter takes their cut, their financial institution they use take their cut. There's the cost of shipping out all the rewards. But our goal is 26,000. If things go really well and we get to 30,000, then I have some stretch goals that I'm aiming for as well.
You've described where the money is going, like, and again, to source the materials, to make sure that they're stable, to make sure that it's a good quality, the finished product is a good quality thing. A lot of times when people contribute to a Kickstarter, there are rewards that they get, like, oftentimes if it's a video game, they'll get a copy of the video game or an early release or something like that. You mentioned rewards, so is there something similar with this one?
Yes. So one of the things that I like to do is actually invite people to suggest rewards in addition to the ones that I already have in mind. So there are rewards that have been really popular in the past, such as copies of my Endangered Alphabets book or the Endangered Alphabets word search puzzles book. And we have those. We have copies of our tabletop game Ulus, Legends of the Nomads, which we created to promote and protect the traditional Mongolian culture and their script. And then in the higher end, I'm offering carvings. So some of these are carvings I've already done, especially as this campaign is timed to end on International Mother Language Day, which is February the 21st. So I have a variety of carvings that say mother tongue tongue that I did for an exhibition several years ago. So those are going to be rewards. And then in addition to that, I'm offering to do people carvings that say either the right to speak, the right to read, the right to write.
And you have some samples of some of your carvings to show, right?
Yeah. So, so both of these are just terrific examples of that combination of the visual éclat. This is how it just sort of strikes you between the eyes, and also the story behind them. So the first one I'm going to show you, well, the first one I'm going to drop. The first one I'm going to show you is this one here. So I'm going to sort of scroll it up the screen because it's a vertical script. So this is Nushu, which is the Chinese women's script. So this was developed in a very small area of 3 or 4 villages in one rather rural part of southern China. So this, the people who actually use this script referred to it as the mosquito script, because each word has this kind of long-legged quality. The words are executed with these beautiful sweeps, but are very delicate and much narrower than standard Chinese. And this actually says, "Thank you all," which is part of an exhibition I did, again, funded by Kickstarter, to do a series of pieces, all of which said, "Thank you all." 12 years, is that our notions in the West of what writing is and should be are extremely narrow. And much of the world sees things very differently. And the only reason our definition is accepted is because the Latin alphabet has employed more lawyers, guns, and money than anybody else. And by the way, during this Kickstarter, I'm giving a series of 5 talks by Zoom on Sundays at noon Eastern time. And the series heading is, what is writing? And so I'll be bringing up a lot of things that we've talked about now, but also some of these carvings as well. So this is a symbol from the Adinkra people of Ghana. In a sense, each of these symbols tells a story. It tells a story that is, in some cases, kind of like a little piece of wisdom. In some cases, it's a sort of an ideogram that represents a quality. So this particular one is Aya, the fern. And because ferns are so resilient and so resourceful and can grow pretty much anywhere, this symbol means resilience and resourcefulness. And so if this were one of the stamps that we used on a chieftain's ceremonial garb, that would be a way of identifying that this was that person's character or assets or ability. And from our point of view, it's like, that's not writing, that's a picture. And these talks that I'm giving are really intended to sort of break down that facile distinction between the two.
What do you want people to take away? If there's one thing you want people to understand, both about the current Kickstarter campaign and just about the Endangered Alphabets Project in general, what would it be? What would those things be?
One of the things is financial. So the only reason the Endangered Alphabets has been able to survive and grow has been from donations from individuals, the vast majority of which have come through Kickstarter. So this is not simply some kind of art exercise or hobby. This is something which is, this fundraiser is integral to the survival of the endangered alphabets. The second thing is, what I'm really hoping to do is to vastly increase the range of this change of attitude where people become more curious about and more interested in cultures that are further away, especially minority cultures. And the writing then becomes a doorway. It becomes something that draws you in, because as you look at these really remarkable and magnetic and beautiful things, it leads you to ask questions.
Mhm.
And so the best I think we can hope from people is that they help us get more people to ask those questions that challenge our assumptions, especially our assumptions of superiority. And as I like to say, and walk out into the world of the endangered alphabets.
Where can people find more information, both about the Endangered Alphabets Project and about this Kickstarter campaign? Where should they look?
Endangeredalphabets.com, all one word, endangeredalphabets.com, very straightforward. That's our main website. Endangeredalphabets.net is our interactive atlas of endangered alphabets, which was actually funded by a Kickstarter a few years ago. It's the only one of its kind in the world. You can go to a map and you zoom in and find all of these remarkable scripts and stories about their culture and their history and their reasons for endangerment, etc. The Endangered Alphabets Project is also therefore on Kickstarter. We have our own page there. It's a very long URL. Probably the best thing to do is to just go to Kickstarter and type in Endangered Alphabets in the search bar. And you'll see that we've actually done, I think, 9 projects, 9 campaigns, all of them successful, thanks to people's support. And the most recent is just called The Right to Speak, the Right to Read, the Right to Write. And click on that one and you're there.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your passion, your obvious passion for this and your knowledge. And thank you for your work.
And thank you so much for asking really good questions.
I do what I can.